In today's video, we'll be looking at the 4th generation Toyota 4Runner. Specifically, we'll be looking at this 2007 SR5 model in this nice nautical blue metallic color. Now, the 4th generation Toyota 4Runner ran from 2003 all the way through 2009, so it had roughly a 6-year span that it was going. Now, it didn't sell nearly as many units as the 3rd generation Toyota 4Runner, still around 600,000. That ended up tapering off in 2008 and 2009 due to higher gas prices and also due to the great financial crisis that would come in the 2008-2009 period. Now, talking production numbers is all well and good, but let's talk more about the exterior, the interior, and the engine options and how they differed from the 3rd generation with this new styling model. Now, a lot of Toyota vehicles that you see from the early and mid-2000s and even closing in on 2010 had a much different design than in the 90s. These vehicles were very round. There weren't a whole lot of really hard lines going down the body of the vehicle, and this 4Runner is no different. The 3rd generation 4Runner had a lot more body lines. Even in the hood, it had a little bit more extreme of a line that didn't have as much curve to it, so that's a big difference that you see in the 4th generation 4Runner. And you can see this carrying all through the front of the vehicle and especially into the A-pillar as it kind of rounds out and goes to the roof. But some noticeable differences from the 4th generation in comparison to the 3rd generation are that the headlights are now plastic. It's a lot easier to manufacture a plastic headlamp, and it's also cheaper to do that. But what you end up with is a very foggy headlamp over time. Also, when you move down to the bottom bumper, in the 3rd generation, you had the blinker and fog lamp integrated down here on the bottom, and while that's the case in the pre-facelift models before 2006, after 2006 and beyond, the blinkers are actually integrated into the headlamps. That's a little bit of a change, but other than that, there's nothing super different from the 3rd generation to the 4th, just some different styling here in the front. There's also the Sport Edition that comes with the hood scoop, just like the 3rd generation, and now into the 5th generation, so that's super nice to have, and it gives a little bit more flair to the front end of this otherwise pretty basic Toyota 4Runner. Now, on the side of the vehicle, it is just as plain Jane as the front. There's really no hard body lines going down the vehicle, and even down here on the bottom portions of the door, you're not seeing any sort of defined lines for this plastic. One thing to note, though, is that there's no locking mechanism on the passenger side. Now, this is different than the 3rd generation, so if you don't have a key fob and you just have a key, you have to run all the way around to the driver's side, unlock the door, and then come back over to open the door for the missus. Now, the rear of this 4th generation 4Runner doesn't have a lot of interesting features, but we'll run through them anyway. On this 4th generation, you can see it comes with a factory rear hatch wing, which is really nice. I think in the 3rd generation, it was only an overseas model that had the availability to have a rear wing. Otherwise, on the limited models, you did have a pretty plain, flat piece of metal that would attach to the rear hatch. You also, on the facelifted model, got LED taillights, which makes this vehicle look a lot more modern. And then, of course, you do get the roll-down back rear window. And you also have the feature to lock all of the doors if you turn the key to the right in the rear hatch, which is super nice. Unfortunately, a lot of these 4th gens seem to have the barrel mechanism lock up on them, so that's one thing that is a little bit different than the 3rd gen. Doesn't seem to have that issue as much. I've also noticed on the 4th gen models, the vacuum that it creates as the air flows over the vehicle when you're driving tends to pull in some of the exhaust smell, at least, when you have that back window down. Not sure if that is just me being sensitive to the smell, or if the way that the air flows over top and underneath these vehicles actually allows for some of the exhaust that comes out to make its way into the cabin. Now we'll make our way under the hood. Behold the 1GR. This is Toyota's V6 engine that they put in the 4th generation Toyota 4Runner. It produces a whopping 245 horsepower and around 282 foot-pounds of torque. And in 2003 and 2004, it actually produced more horsepower than the V8 model that was put in this vehicle as well. That is right, the 4th generation 4Runner is the only 4Runner model to ever be able to have the V8, and it not just any V8, it got the 2UZ, which is a phenomenal Toyota engine. It's also found in the Lexus GX 470. Now in 2005 and onward, the engine, the V8 that it put in here, was actually around 265 horsepower, so then it beat out this V6, but this engine nonetheless is super smooth. I've been fortunate to drive both the V8 and the V6 model, and I can say while the V8 is nicer to have a little bit more torque, this engine is fantastic, especially when you compare it to the power numbers of the previous generation V6 that only put out around 183 horsepower. Now with this V6 engine, there are a couple fun, interesting features. So this V6 model comes with VVTi, so it's variable valve timing with intelligence. So this is Toyota's version of VTEC for you Honda guys that are out there. It also has a timing chain as opposed to the timing belt on the V8 models, which would have to be replaced around every 100,000 miles. And just one other small little thing is the oil change, or the oil filter right here, is right front and center, making it super easy to do oil changes, as opposed to the 3rd generation where you're wedging your arm halfway up the engine bay while laying on the ground. The 4th generation is super simple. Now with this being an SR5, it would typically have cloth seats, but this one in fact has leather, and the interior of this vehicle has no real similarities between that of the 3rd generation 4Runner except for the steering wheel. The steering wheel in the facelifted 3rd gen has this 4-spoke design on the steering wheel, but other than that, there's really nothing that is similar. This 4th generation 4Runner has all of the nice creature comforts that people like. It also has some nice dials on the steering wheel to change the mode between maybe CD or FM radio. You can change the tracks, you can change the volume. But over here, I will say that things get a little bit funky. Now, starting with the air control units, these are something very non-conventional design here, as you can kind of pick what setting you want in this strange kind of setup that you've got here, as you can kind of press low, maybe incremental up here on the airflow. You've got temperature up. It's just a very strange design. Typically you'd have like dials, but definitely unique. Not the biggest fan, but I do like the uniqueness of it. As we move up, nothing super crazy with the radio. I have also seen people who put a nice little touchscreen head unit in here. I think that makes the vehicle look a lot more modern than all of these little buttons. And then as we move down, we also have nice little heated seat buttons here, but you would never know because the paint has faded off of them. So you've got, I believe, a lower back, and then you've got your bun warmers right there, and right in the middle is neutral. And then same thing on this side. Now, you do also get some nice little storage. You can keep a wallet or little items down in there. You have a cigarette lighter, or you could also plug in an adapter to have a USB port. And you also get a nice little console right in here. Maybe put some sunglasses or a document or something in there. And then you also have this nice little overhead storage. Again, you could put your insurance and or sunglasses up in there. And then you have the glove box where you can keep roughly a 5-pound bag of cheese if you need. And then there's also this nice little storage compartment that not a whole lot of people know about, but boom, right there. You could also keep a couple of tortillas just in case it's a hot day and you need to make yourself a quesadilla while on the road. Now on the door, you do have power windows, power mirrors, and power locks, but the placement of them is quite strange. Typically your arm is going to rest on the armrest, and then you've got a handle right here, which is where you would normally have all of your little switches for the window, but instead Toyota's placed them lower down in a less likely area to actually touch and feel. I guess they're out of the way, but it's a bit of a strange spot to put them. Now, if you're somebody who cares about bottle storage, 4Runner really tried their best here, but it wasn't the greatest execution. On the door, you have somewhere that you can place your bottles, just a typical water bottle only though, as you can fit that in there. But unfortunately, you cannot fit a large size water bottle as it just won't fit in. But Toyota does have these cubbies up here. Again, they were a good idea. The execution though, not so great. You've got this middle piece that you can pull out and that you could slot around, and you can make them even, or one side's bigger than the other, or just pull it out all together. And then you also have these arms that can open up and kind of hug your water bottle if it is a bit of a smaller size. You do tend to have the problem though when you're driving around, this will push and the arm will actually close back in, and now your bottle is flying around and it's knocking into your air controls. Now the backs of these 4Runners are very nice and spacious. I'm 6'3" and I've got plenty of room. It's fairly comfortable back here, and the best part, there are tons of cup holders. There's two in the door over here, one for smaller bottles, one for bigger, and then you also have this armrest down here that you boom, pop it out, and you've got two more where you can place your bottle. You also have rear climate control. This was a feature on the 3rd generation, but not many had it. You also have a spot where you can place a trash bag. So this is really moving into soccer mobile territory here, where little Jimmy and all of his buddies can throw their trash rather than stuffing their half-eaten McNugget underneath the seat in front of them. Very smart there on Toyota's part. Now the backs of these 4Runners do have plenty of room, just like the 3rd generation does, and you also get these nice little mirrors that are up top, so you can get some assistance while you go and park. You also can put down the rear seats, just like the 3rd generation and really any SUV, giving you a lot more space either to carry wood, or even if you wanted to camp out in the back of one of these 4Runners. Now these 4th generations did offer 3rd row seating, but let me tell you right now, I would never want to sit in the back. I've ridden in the back of a GX 470, and there is little to no room. With this having an even smaller cabin space, there is no way that I would want to ride back here. But if you are a little bit smaller, a little bit younger, that might be a nice option. Thanks for tuning into this video. I hope you guys got a little bit of information and maybe a laugh out of it. Overall, I really enjoy this 4th generation 4Runner. It has 177,000 miles on it, but it is still super agile. Everything feels really tight. The pickup, the steering, even the brakes, they all feel really good for this 15-year-old car. So while maybe the looks aren't as desirable as some of the other generations, mechanically this vehicle is just as reliable as the 3rd generation 4Runner, and I'm sure people are going to put well over 300,000 miles on these vehicles, whether you have the V6 or the V8. Overall, these are just fantastic cars. Hope you guys enjoyed, and like always, I'll see you in the next one.